Hey y'all, my name is Susan Sparks and I'm the senior pastor here at Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. We are a diverse community brought together by faith. We hope that you enjoy our service today.
Ride on, no man can hinder me. Ride on, no man can hinder me. Ride on, King Jesus, ride on, King Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, Jesus. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, Jesus. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. King Jesus rides on the milk white horse. No man works like in the river of Jordan he did cross. No man works like him. Ride on, Jesus, Jesus. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. King Jesus rides in the middle of the air. No man works like him. He calls us saints from everywhere. No man works like him. Ride on, Jesus, Jesus. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. No man can hinder, no man can hinder me. Oh, no man can hinder, no man can hinder me. Ride on, Jesus, Jesus. No man can hinder me. I'm gonna ride on, Jesus, ride on. No man can hinder me. 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 Ride on Jesus. Ride on Jesus. Jesus.
Yesterday afternoon, about 1 o'clock, the Lord appeared in my living room. And the Lord said to me, Susan. Well, you surprised there's a southern accent coming out of the Lord? What? I heard scoffing. Let me go back. And the Lord said to me, Susan, your Palm Sunday sermon needs a little bit of help. I want you to change the title and link Palm Sunday to the debut of the new season of Game of Thrones. And then there was a pause, and all I heard was, "Thus saith the Lord." So what could I do? I did exactly as the Lord commanded, and I changed my sermon title and changed up my sermon. So please, brothers and sisters, hear the words of my new sermon, which is entitled, Winter is Coming. The Bible is full of wonderful stories that teach and guide us, full of people who can be role models to us, full of words that inspire us and give us wisdom and hope. But not today. As a sign on my desk says, not today, Satan. Not today. Today, the Bible has teed up a story that I hope we never follow, ever. Not as a nation, not as a community of faith, and not as individuals. I mean, we all know the story BJ just read for us. Jesus and the disciples enter Jerusalem, and the crowd welcomes them with open arms, waving palms and cheering, "Hosanna! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord." Then we fast forward 5 days later. That beautiful narrative, that triumphant entry, that royal welcome takes a very different turn. Jesus is brought in front of Pilate, where there are no palms being raised, only fists. Where there are no cheers of welcome, only jeers and threats. The same crowd that welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem as the Messiah turned on him with lightning speed and shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" When I was reading the story this week, I couldn't help but think of tonight's debut of the first episode of the last season of Game of Thrones. Are you happy? And for those of you who aren't wrapped up in this very addictive show, very quickly, it's this medieval fantasy epic. It's about kings and queens and knights and renegades playing a deadly game of control for the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. And one of the great houses of Westeros, the House of Stark, sits in the far north, where the winter onset can be fast and furious and precarious. The great house has a motto, and that motto is one of warning and vigilance, and it's made of only 3 words: winter is coming. Today on Palm Sunday, people are welcoming Jesus and hailing him as the Messiah, but winter is coming. And oh, how fast people turn when the cold sets in. The story today brings so many lessons on so many levels, but one of the most important, I believe, is a lesson about hospitality and welcome. What is true Christian hospitality all about? I mean, to try to get into this concept this week, I actually Googled Christian hospitality, and do you know what I found? Like 1 million articles on coffee hour. Coffee hour, really? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a good coffee hour. I mean, I'm well aware that the congregation probably needs a jolt of caffeine after one of my sermons. I mean, and maybe a sugar hit too, a nice donut, a cookie on a good day, maybe some onion dip, whatever. But call me crazy, I think Jesus had something bigger in mind for hospitality in the church, something bigger than coffee hour. I mean, it's easy to welcome people with pleasant words and smiles at coffee hour. It's the life after coffee hour that matters. It's the life in the face of the onset of winter that matters. It's the life when the cold moves in that matters. It's the life when the trials start that matters. What do we do then? Do we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters? Or do we step back into the shadows in silence as the crowd yells, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" That is the true test of hospitality. Now, most of us hear something like that and say, well, of course I'm going to stand in solidarity with people. I would never stand in the shadows or in silence, or worse yet, yell, "Crucify him, crucify him." Of course I wouldn't do that. In truth, I'm afraid we do it every day. I mean, think about it just from an individual perspective. We can be great friends, the best of friends, the best of partners, spouses, parents, at coffee hour. on the sunny Palm Sundays of life. But what about when the winter sets in and the trials start? What about when the divorce hits, or the addiction crisis surfaces, or the cancer diagnosis is made, or a job is lost? Can we still wave the palm of hospitality and stand in solidarity with others in their pain? I mean, think about it also from a national perspective. Oh yeah, we as Americans are right there in the beginning, waving the palm of welcome. I mean, in fact, we have a huge statue right out here in the harbor that waves the proverbial palm leaf that says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to be free." But winter is coming. And when the trials of life start, do we really as a nation show hospitality? Or does the cold harden our hearts? I mean, the answer is pretty clear. Just look at the statistics. I mean, today in this country, 40 million people live below the poverty level. This, the richest nation in the world? How about equal access to health care? 3.9 million children have no health care in this country. I mean, what about civil rights? What about wage and hour laws? What about the growing gap between the rich and the poor? What about showing hospitality to those wanting citizenship in this nation? We go from waving palm leaves in New York Harbor to yelling, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Don't feel like that's you? Well, when is the last time you signed a petition against unfair legislation? When is the last time you wrote a letter to your senator or congressperson on a justice issue? When's the last time we stood up and spoke out for something we believed or against something we knew was wrong? Standing in the shadows and saying nothing is tantamount to yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him." One of the areas that I think this Palm Sunday message speaks most powerfully in my mind is race in America. Cheryl Sims sent this incredible article to me and to Toby this week, and it is one of the best and most troubling discussions of white privilege I have ever read in my life. Thank you, Cheryl, for sending that article. And it was written by Kyle Korver, a white NBA basketball player for the Utah Jazz. Now, don't fade out on me if you're not into sports, okay? Don't start pulling out your phones. This has nothing to do with the NBA. That's just his background. Stay with me. Are y'all here? Right here? Okay. This is important. He reflected on all the times that his fellow players of color had been harassed by fans in his presence, or had been unfairly treated, even injured by the police, while he stood by in the shadows saying nothing. He called it blending in and opting out. Blending in and opting out. That's what you can do with white privilege. Over the years, after watching teammate after teammate stare down the raw, ugly face of racism, he began to realize his personal responsibility in their pain, in that pain. And he said, "I now know that as a white man, I have to hold my fellow white men accountable. And we all have to be accountable, period." And this is so powerful. Listen to this. Not just for our own actions, but also for the ways that our inaction can create a safe space for toxic behavior. How our inaction can create a safe space for toxic behavior. He went on to explain that the most dangerous form of racism isn't the loud, stupid kind. It's the quiet, subtle kind. It's the kind that almost hides itself in plain view. It's the person who does and says all the right things in public. They're perfectly friendly when they meet a person of color. They're very polite. But in private, well, they sort of wish that everyone would stop making everything about race all the time. He ended the article by saying this: I believe what's happening to people of color in this country right now in 2019 is wrong. The fact that black Americans are more than 5 times as likely to be incarcerated as white Americans is wrong. The fact that black Americans are more than twice likely to live in poverty as white Americans is wrong. The fact that black unemployment rates nationally are double that of the overall unemployment rate is wrong. And I believe it's the responsibility of anyone on the privileged end of those responsibilities, of those inequities, to make it right. Brothers and sisters, winter is here. Does the cold harden our hearts so that we simply blend in and opt out? Or do we recognize our responsibility and stand in solidarity? The book of Romans chapter 12 says this: take delight in honoring each other and regard others as more important than yourself. When God's children are in need, be the one to help them out. Look for opportunities to be hospitable. Vice President Hubert Humphrey put it a different way in his last speech to the U.S. Senate in 1977. He said this: the moral test of a government is how it treats those who are in the dawn of life, those who are in the twilight of life, and those who are in the shadows of life. I say that's not just the moral test of a government, that's the true test of Christian hospitality. This week, I hope that you will take these wonderful palms, and especially the little crosses, with you. Carry them with you. Put them in your purse, or take a piece of the palm and put it in your wallet. Put it on the wall of your office, whatever you need to do. And every time you see it, think about the crowd who waved these for Jesus on the sunny Palm Sunday when all things were good. And then think about the courage it will take later this week to stand with Jesus in his trial and wave that palm in front of Pilate. That trial, Jesus' trial, is the same trial that many of our brothers and sisters face every single day. Trials based on the color of one's skin, or the person one loves, or the God one worships. When the trials of poverty and hunger and racism and homophobia and religious hatred start, where are we as Americans? Where are we as members of Madison Avenue Baptist Church? Where are we as individuals? Are we standing in solidarity with our brothers and sisters? Or have we opted out, standing in the shadows, yelling, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Brothers and sisters, winter is coming. Where will you stand when the cold sets in? And the people said,
I saw his love abroad, my Savior's love to me. Love to the loveless shown, that they might lovely be. Oh, who am I that for my sake my Lord should take frail
Thanks for joining us. Madison Avenue Baptist Church is located at 31st and Madison Avenue in New York City. Our website is www.mabcnyc.org.